welcome to Your Choice 2020 primary election coverage on HOMTV. I'm Gabi Malta. Election day is Tuesday, August 4th, and the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Meridian Township Clerk Dreyfus joins us for this election interview to discuss important election information on what voters need to know for August 2020 primary election coverage. Brett, thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yes, well, to start us off, for those who don't know, please explain how a primary election is different from a general election.
So in Michigan, we just had a primary in March. It was the presidential primary. The presidential primary is a closed primary. So voters have to select which ballot style they want, whether it's a ballot style that represents the Democratic Party or a ballot style that represents the Republican Party. And in this particular election, in the August primary election, it is an open primary. An open primary means that all candidates for all political parties are on the same ballot, which means that anybody can vote for whichever party they want to vote in, but they can only vote in for that one party. That's a very important point. Only one party in the primary. So people ask all the time, they tell me, I don't understand this. Why can't I vote for like 6 candidates that I won on, and I'm just going to use this as a hypothetical example. Why can't I vote for 6 Republican candidates, but I do want to vote for 2 Democratic candidates that I feel strongly about? And I should have a right to be able to do that. I don't understand why I don't have a right to do that. And there's a simple answer for that. Michigan is not like other states that require you to register what your political party affiliation is before you get a ballot. So Michigan doesn't have any voter registration that involves political parties. So when people say I'm a registered Democrat or I'm a registered Republican, that doesn't exist according to the Secretary of State. It only exists that you may pay dues to that political party. And in fact, it's totally legal to join both parties, all parties. You can pay dues to the Democratic Party, you can pay dues to the Republican Party, and be members of both political parties. So the difference is that when you're casting votes, you're casting votes for officers or nominees of that club. Let's call it a club instead of a political party, and it's easy to think of it that way. If you think about it as a club, let's say it's a classic car club, and the only thing that you guys meet about, these people meet about, is to discuss classic cars. Let's think there's another type of a club, and it's called International Travel Club, and the only thing that really goes on in that club is everybody discusses and shares ideas about traveling. Would it make sense for people in the travel club to vote for officers and people who are involved in the classic car club? And would it be appropriate for the classic car people to want to vote for only their own officers, but occasionally on something maybe decide to vote for the officers of the International Travel Club? Of course, we all know no. The answer is no. But when we think of political parties, somehow we think that it's different. It's not. It's the same thing. A primary means that you're selecting one club, one set of beliefs or values that you want the candidates to represent in the November election. And that is where any voter gets to choose whatever party they want, and that's in the general November election. And then you can cross over and vote for any party, any person, and you vote, hopefully you vote for the best person. And my view is you should vote for the best person and not vote based on the party. That's my own personal view.
So you brought up crossing over, but could you explain crossover voting and why that's not allowed in Michigan?
Crossover voting means that, using the example before, let's say that a person votes for only the Republican nominees for Congress, because that's what's on the ballot right now. There's different choices that for Senate and for U.S. Congress, House of Representatives. And then they decide they want to vote because there's no Republicans running in the local township offices. They decide that they want to vote for a Democrat in that particular race. If they vote for a Democrat locally, but they voted for the Republicans anywhere else, the entire partisan section of the ballot's invalidated. Only the local proposals, which are nonpartisan, will be tabulated. So that's really bad. That's the worst thing you can do, is completely invalidate all your partisan selections. So I have a saying: pretend you're driving a car. Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. It's a no lane changing zone. And when you go, you'll see that one lane is marked Democratic Party and one lane is marked Republican Party. Stay in your exclusive lane and you'll have no problems. Just for this August primary.
All right, and speaking of the Democratic Party, on the primary election ballot, Meridian Township voters will decide the members of the Township Board and Park Commission. So there's no Republican candidates on the primary or general election ballots for those local offices. Could you please comment on the history of the Township Board and Park Commission makeup? Is this a significant change for the township to not have any Republican candidates on the ballot for these local positions? Why or why not?
So the history of Meridian Township is that it was predominantly a Republican community through the 1950s, 60s, and 70s predominantly. There were Democrats elected, but it was definitely considered a Republican stronghold. And somewhere in the 2000s, in the late 90s, some demographics shifted, and some people's voting behavior shifted, and it started becoming more democratic. And by 2012, it was a fully Democratic board that was elected in Meridian Township. And in 2016, it would continue to be a fully Democratic board, and also, for the Parks Commission as well.
All right, great, thank you. So moving on to my next question, due to the passage of Proposal 3 in 2018 and the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been a big push for absentee voting. How many absentee ballots have been sent out by the Meridian Township Clerk's office, and how many have returned?
So let me back up for a second and say it's unfortunate and sad and depressing and upsetting that a microbe, an invisible invader, had to swoop around the world and come into our lands and cause heartache and havoc and devastation in order to want to impact the electoral process the way it did. When I first came on board in 2012, it was important for me to really want to expand absentee voting in Meridian Township. And anybody that paid attention to board meetings over the years realized that I was a strong advocate for, particularly back then, it was before Proposal 3 passed in 2018, you had to have reasons for absentee voting. So one of the biggest populations of people that benefited from it was people over the age of 60 and people with disabilities. So I really pushed for that by wanting to expand the permanent absentee voter list. And often people get confused about that. So it's important. This is a great opportunity once again to explain what goes on with that. So when people sign up to be on a permanent list, which is now called the automatic ballot request list, and I'll explain why the name changed as well, but everybody was familiar with it as the permanent absentee voter list, permanent AV list. When people signed up on that, we often get calls from all sorts of people and emails constantly up through even like today going, I know I should be getting a ballot. Why do I keep getting these cards and applications in the mail? I signed up, I expect to get a ballot. Michigan law requires that before every election that every voter has to apply to get a ballot, an absentee ballot. In the past, you had to certify a reason for it. Now you just have to do it. And so if you're on the list, that means you automatically get that application before every election. That's the difference. Once you get that application, you simply fill it out. The easiest thing to do nowadays is you don't even have to put postage on and mail it. Easiest thing to do is take a picture, email it back to me, Township Clerk, and then we can process it and get your ballot quicker that way. So that's the newest way to really go about doing it. People still mail it back. Of course you can mail it back. Some people don't have phones or want to take pictures and do that, but it's certainly an easy way to do it. You can also fax it back. You can also take a scan of it and send it back by email using a digital scan as well. So those are all ways to get your application back to us. Okay, I think that was it. And I forgot where we were going with that. How many, the numbers that we had too. So here, we have a lot of numbers here. Let me take a quick look. So we mailed out, so because the Secretary of State for the first time ever mailed out lots of applications, we mailed out 29,670 applications for an absentee ballot. And we received back 12,953 as of yesterday. We have mailed out 12,738 ballots, which is absentee ballots, which is an extraordinary large amount. You know, that is a huge amount of ballots. That's more ballots than were ever mailed. The last one in the gubernatorial race in 2018 in November, we had something like roughly 8,000 ballots. That just puts things in perspective. And we only received back so far 6,442 ballots, which is about approximately 50% of the ballots are back, and we have a week left before ballots have to be back in the clerk's office by 8 p.m. on Tuesday, August 4th. So it's important that voters remember, some people take their ballots and they stick them away somewhere and they forget about them. It just happens. In this election, I am encouraging everyone to remember, and don't wait till the last minute. And if you do not mail your ballots back, you legally can mail them back anytime you want, but I highly recommend that you do not mail them back after, and at the latest, I would suggest do not mail them back after Thursday. I believe that's July 30th. Do not mail them back after that date, even though you're allowed to. I highly recommend you don't, because post office is experiencing mail delays due to COVID-19 staffing issues. We've been told that directly. Some people get their ballots in 2 days. Other people takes 7 days to get their ballot to Okemos or to Hazlitt. And so too risky. If you have an absentee ballot, and I recommend that you just drop it off. We have a 24-hour convenient and secure drop box in front of the Municipal Hall building, and you can drive up, drop it. You can get out of your car. We have another box closer to the building you can drop it off in, or you can come in and see some of our smiling election staff, and you can hand it to one of us inside the town hall room. We have safe social distancing set up. So everybody is 6 feet apart. You're not going to be able to interact with us close up, and you do need to wear a mask when entering the municipal building. We are going to have late hours this week too for people who may want to come by. We're going to be open from 9 to 4, normal hours that we have under the COVID situation that we've been running for a long time. We're open 9 to 4 the rest of the week. We're open on Thursday till 7 p.m. and we're open on Saturday, August 1st from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can get registered to vote. You can get an absentee ballot, and you can actually just vote. You can come in, fill out the app, and just simply vote and take care of it right then and there. If you wait and still don't do that and want to come in on Monday, August 3rd, you can come in, but you can't take your absentee ballot with you. You can vote in the building, and you can vote up till 4 p.m. Another important consideration is, remember when I said earlier we talked about crossover voting?
Yep.
Invalidation. What happens right now if you're listening to this this interview, and you discover that you had crossover voted right now and you submitted your absentee ballot. The good news is that you can spoil your ballots. You can contact the clerk's office and say that you want to spoil your ballot. You can do that all the way up till 4 p.m. on Monday, August 3rd. So up until that time, you can call the office or email us, say you want to spoil the ballot. But you do have to come in person. So first let us know that you want to do that. And then we confirm that we'll tell you that you have to come in, or you can just come in person if you just, cut to the chase. You have to come in and sign a brief form that says we can spoil the ballot that we sent you that's now been sent back to us. We can spoil that ballot and we can issue you a new one. That's what you're signing. That form and you coming in person protects the integrity of the electoral process by requiring somebody, otherwise somebody could come in and try to spoil your existing ballot and we can't prove that it's absolutely you. So that's why you have to come in person to spoil a ballot. But you can do that, and I encourage anybody to do that if they think that they had voted for, they crossed over and they voted all Democrats, but they voted for one Republican or vice versa.
All right, so with an influx in absentee ballots, what are your voter turnout predictions?
So my predictions were, I had some interesting numbers. I love doing it. It's kind of fun to kind of do that. And I've been pretty good in the past. I predicted accurate returns in the last few ones. It was 27% turnout in 2016. You have to compare similar elections because elections are very different. August primaries are very different than November in terms of composition and who turns out. A lot of people are on vacation typically. This election is vastly different. There's never been an AV, absentee voter situation like this. The Secretary of State has never mailed out applications to all voters that were not on our Meridian absentee voter list. By the way, getting back to that, I never finished mentioning that when I came on board, there were about 26 or 2,800 people on that AV list. I did mailings and targeted outreach to seniors and people in facilities so that they could be on that list so they don't have to have the hassle of trying to get those applications. So the list went from that to like 3,200 to like 3,600 and eventually went to like over 6,000, 5,800 and then over 6,000. And then between last year, when I got it to that point to this year, the absentee list is now over 12,000. So you can see how enormous, and that has changed the dynamics of voting. So we have so many people that request an absentee ballot that we're going to blow away the numbers from any time ever primary ever before. But I've also noticed that a number of people are not returning their ballots, which is unusual. So in 2016, let's say that there were 2,000 absentee ballots cast. Just use that number. Let's say 2,000 absentee ballots were cast in the August 2016 primary. About 92% of those people returned their absentee ballots. In 2020, we've issued over 12,000 ballots, AV ballots, and right now we've received back about 60, about half, about 6,400, 6,300 ballots back. Let's say in the next week we only get back 1,000 or 2,000 ballots more. That means the
pandemic that plays into that, the change.
I'm sorry, what?
Do you think it's because of the pandemic, which is why?
No, I don't. It's because they have the ballots at home. It's because many people requested a ballot that had never voted primaries before, and when they got their ballot, they seemed to not care about it that much because maybe they didn't understand the nature of the ballot, what was on it, and maybe they thought, some people might have thought this was actually a presidential election already at this particular point. And I think some people did it because they knew that everybody else was doing it, which is good. I mean, to get people to want to do it, but hopefully for the right reasons. And so I'm concerned that we're going to have a much higher non-return rate than we did in 2016. We might only have 75% of the AV ballots coming back. And that's unfortunate because, I mean, with all the expense and hassle that we've all gone to get the ballots in a voter's hand, it would be nice if that voter took some time, studied the ballot, and then cast some selections and participated in our democracy because they got the ballot right in their hands, and all they got to do is put a postage stamp on it and send it back. And by the way, there's been questions about the amount of postage. We've had different things. Post office give us different numbers. You're safe if you put 70 cents on it for sure. The Okemos post office has told us that they'll accept one stamp on theirs for some reason. It's right on the line. We've heard that it's 1.1 ounce, it's 1 ounce, whatever. So let me assure any voter, if you put didn't think you put insufficient postage, they all come to our office. All ballots come to us, and we have to pay the difference after the election. We pay the discrepancy. So don't worry. We want you to pay your postage, but ballots will get delivered to us regardless. And by the way, in a universal vote by mail that I advocate for, can I touch on that? Is that okay right now for a moment?
Sure.
So universal vote by mail is really taking what we're talking about right now to a whole nother level. Voters would never have to do this application for a ballot, an absentee ballot, ever again. One time you fill out the form, your voter registration form, and it lists where you live. As long as you're still living at that place, you'll always get a ballot before every election. So that's the first thing. You save so much time, money, resources, and effort, and we're really not sacrificing any of the security of the election by doing it this way. In fact, all it does is greatly enhance access to a ballot for all citizens. The second thing we do is provide a return envelope that has postage paid on it already. So what I just talked about a minute earlier, yeah, some voters get stymied when it comes to figuring out postage and get annoyed about putting postage on, and rightfully so. All citizens across Michigan pay to keep the Capitol maintained. It's all part of a group. We all chip in to pay for the Capitol grounds. All citizens should chip in for postage for all elections for all citizens throughout the state. So the state should take on the cost of postage for all elections throughout the entire state. That's only fair and equitable, and it distributes the cost evenly among all taxpayers across the state. By doing this, by creating these two changes, we eliminate voter suppression in Michigan. And voter suppression is the act of election officials and others misallocating resources such as tabulators and misinformation that makes voters wait in line for many, many hours and maybe give up and not want to vote, discourages them from getting absentee ballots, discourages them from going to the polling location, or maybe even gives wrong information about where to go. All of this goes away when we have universal vote by mail. Everybody that's of voting age gets access to a ballot. Even people who are homeless, non-traditional addresses can have access to ballots like they do now. Everybody gets access to a ballot. It's secure. The signatures are matched. The people sign, and they're matched on their digital files that they have, that you maintain your voter records. So there's a security system. It's tracked all the way through the system. And so it's a secure method. It's tracked, and there's virtually impossible to have voter fraud, and it eliminates voter suppression. And it's cost effective and eliminates a lot of and it makes it pandemic free. There's no worry because you don't need any polling locations except one polling location can be maintained at the township building for the 40-day period. So somebody always has a place to go to vote, but there's no more need for remote polling locations. And that creates a whole series of opportunities and benefits to the community at large by getting rid of all these polling locations. It's a huge benefit on so many levels. It's a pandemic elimination strategy completely. Most of the polling locations are staffed by elderly people who work super long hours. They work like 15 hours a day. Can you imagine your grandmother or your great-grandmother working from 5:30 in the morning until midnight, and she's 85 years old, and we have those people doing that. And they do it because they care. They really care. It's not about the money. It's about they care. They care a lot. And you know what? I think that its time has come. We need to evolve away from this sort of, it's almost barbaric. It's ridiculous what we're doing. And there's more security risks doing this way than it is by vote by mail. We eliminate the need for 19 pieces of equipment that cost $5,000 a piece, $100,000 worth of tablet equipment. We eliminate 19 laptop computers for another $10,000. We eliminate all the software, all the transporting of ballots, all the excessive security measures, all the expenses of training, all the labor expenses, all of it goes away. And what we have is a universal system of voting, and that's what we all want. And it benefits Democrats and Republicans equally, because as time goes on, within a short period, everything stays as it was before. And whatever proportion of Democrats and Republicans vote, that same proportion is going to wind up using universal vote by mail. So it's a myth that one party benefits over the other when it comes to that sort of thing.
All right, so I am just going to let you know we do have around roughly 8 minutes left. I am going to move on to voting in person on election day. What can voters expect? What are the rules at the precincts? And what are the voters allowed and not allowed to do in person?
Thank you very much. And I just want to clarify, I want everybody to come and vote, whether it's by absentee voting or by going to the polling location on August 4th. What I'm talking about is changing the system and making it easier. So when you hear me getting down on polling locations, it doesn't mean I don't want anybody going to the polling location. Right. So I just make sure that's really clear. I want anybody who's not voting by AV, listen, anybody out there, you who's not voting by AV, go on Tuesday to your local polling location. And here's what you need to do. First of all, we're going to make it as, COVID safe as possible. So keep this in mind. We are going to maintain at all the polling locations 6-foot distances between people. Wear a mask when you go in. State law has just been stated very clearly that we cannot require it. It's separate. Under state law, we cannot require it. But we highly requested and encourage everybody to wear a mask. If you do not wear a mask, we have provisions in place to sequester you, and you'll be able to vote, just not in the normal method of going through the same path that you normally do. The polling locations will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Bring your driver's license or another authorized photo ID. If you happen to forget it, you can still vote. No one's ever been turned away in Meridian Township for not having an ID if they sign the affidavit on the back of the application to vote that you get when you walk in. You're just basically saying, I don't have my ID with me, and you get to vote. And we've been doing that for 8 years. And to my knowledge, not a single person has ever been turned away, because you can use that affidavit of ID in order to be able to vote. When you're in line, if there's a line, and there's going to be a very, very small chance of a line, because it's going to be mainly absentee voting, and because of August elections are small turnout, we expect very, very little lines. However, the most likely time for a line would be about 7 a.m. in the morning, which is unfortunate. Just when we're opening up is the only. So I always encourage people, don't come at 7 a.m. If you want the fastest, easiest voting experience, don't come at 7 a.m. I know some people want to do that before they go to work or get it done first thing in the morning, but there's more of you than you think. More people think like you than you realize. So in order to not have that happen, I just recommend staggering it out over the course of the day a little more. But again, even if you come at 7 a.m., there's not going to be a big line. So if you come at 7 a.m., don't wear any shirts, buttons, literature, or caps that say and have any political messaging. If you're in line, you can't talk about anything that's on the ballot. You can't talk about things that are political that might relate to something on the ballot. And you can't talk loud enough if you're inside the facility and this is all within the 100 feet of the door. It's called the 100-foot campaigning line. So within 100 foot of the door of getting into your polling location is where this applies. 100 feet back, all the way once you get, and then all the way in once you're in the building. And then if you're talking too loudly, you may have an election staff person saying to keep your voice down or please turn off your phone. You're allowed to talk on your phone. Again, same rules apply. You have to talk very quietly. You can't talk on the phone while you're in your voting, in actually voting your ballot. You can't take photos of anything in the polling location, but you can take a photo of your voted ballot in the voting area itself. So just of the ballot itself, you can take a picture of it. Can't show it to anybody, but you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to do research. You can bring in literature, but you can't show anybody your literature. You can bring in a tablet. You can do your research there, though we would ask you to try to do most of that not there, obviously, but you are allowed to do research there, and you can take the time you need to cast your ballot. We also have a voter access terminal for people with disabilities or not people without disabilities that want a different way of having their ballots marked for them. And we have people that are trained to show you how to use that voter assistance terminal when you're there. And again, the precincts are open until 8 p.m. If you have an absentee ballot and you changed your mind and you want to vote and you have it with you, bring your absentee ballot with you, and you can surrender it, sign a form, and you can vote there. So if you didn't mail your absentee ballot back, you can take it with you and you can vote at the precinct. If you already mailed it in, it's too late at that point. If that ends after Monday, you can't spoil your ballot after 4 p.m. on Monday.
Okay, thank you. And then we have roughly 3 minutes left. So is there anything else you believe voters need to know about the August primary election that you'd like to add to wrap things up?
I think that personally, I'm very excited to see the tremendous interest in absentee voting. I do think that that is the next evolution in elections and is going to increase voter participation across all aspects of our society. Also, I do want to mention that we need election inspectors even for this election, we're a little tight. We have training available this Saturday, August 1st, for anybody that might want to do it. Contact the clerk's office, 853-4300. Give a call, and you can fill out a simple application, and then you can work the August 4th election. We do pay $11 an hour. We'll provide training. You get paid for your training as well, and you get to roll up your sleeves and help make democracy function. If you can't make the August election, we're going to need people in November as well. So you can sign up too, and you can work the November election as an election inspector. Very important role. We can't do an election, given the way we currently do things, without you folks making this democracy function. So help out if you can, please.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for being here with us today to provide this voter information. I'm Gabi Malta, inviting you to watch live primary election night coverage on Tuesday, August 4th, right here on HOMTV. Thanks for watching.